The arrival of the eclipse. The uncharted void of space lit up with an unnatural glow as the Earth Federation's newest starship, Eclipse, emerged from hyperspace. The ship's sleek, obsidian hull reflected faint starlight, giving it an otherworldly presence. Powered by the revolutionary helix drive, a quantum propulsion system developed in secrecy, the Eclipse had just completed its first experimental jump. Inside the command deck, Captain Elias Grant stood at the central console, his sharp eyes scanning the holographic interface for answers. "Status report," Grant barked, his voice calm yet commanding. The crew scrambled to check their stations. This wasn't a routine test run. Something had gone very wrong. Lieutenant Amara Voss, the Eclipse's navigation officer, frowned at her terminal. "Captain, we're nowhere. None of these stars match known charts. We've jumped too far, possibly into an entirely new galaxy." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. The eclipse was supposed to prove humanity's ability to reach distant corners of their galaxy, not leap into another. Chief Engineer Lucas Hart jogged onto the deck, sweat on his brow. "Helix drive stabilized, sir, but our jump went beyond calculated tolerances. This wasn't supposed to happen." "Not supposed to happen," Grant echoed, his jaw tightening. He turned to Amara. "Any nearby systems, planets, anything?" "Scanning now," Amara replied, her fingers flying over the console. The holographic star map began to populate, but the readings were disconcerting. "Sir, there's a planetary system a few light years away, but we've got company. Multiple unidentified vessels closing in fast." The encounter. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the unidentified ships approached. The alien vessels, sleek and dagger-shaped, emitted a faint, eerie purple glow. Their movements were precise and deliberate, encircling the eclipse. "Hostile intent?" Grant asked, standing tall amidst the growing anxiety. "Hard to tell," replied Lieutenant Mason Reed, the ship's tactical officer. "They're holding formation but haven't powered weapons yet." A sudden burst of static filled the bridge, followed by a guttural voice speaking in broken English. "Unidentified vessel, you have trespassed into Zereth Dominion territory. Surrender your ship and prepare for boarding, or face annihilation." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Open a channel." "This is Captain Elias Grant of the Earth Federation starship Eclipse. We've arrived here unintentionally and mean no harm. We request peaceful communication." The alien voice interrupted, filled with disdain. "Humans, primitive creatures, your technology is insignificant. You will surrender, or you will die." Grant turned to Mason. "Weapons status." "Armed and ready, sir," Mason replied, his tone resolute. "But their numbers. There are at least a dozen ships, and their energy signatures suggest advanced technology." "Energy shields?" Grant asked. "Yes, sir. Standard configuration." "From what I can tell," Mason answered. Grant's lips curled into a faint smile. "Standard won't save them from us. Humanity strikes back." The Eclipse sprang into action. The ship's advanced targeting systems locked onto the nearest alien vessel. Mason fired the first volley, a precise blast from the ship's particle cannons. The alien shields flickered, unable to withstand the intensity of the human weaponry. The alien ship erupted in a bright explosion, pieces scattering into the void. The Zereth fleet hesitated for a moment, shocked by the ferocity of the human counterattack. Then, as if provoked, they retaliated. Purple beams of energy streaked toward the Eclipse, but the ship's helix shields absorbed the impact with ease. "Shields holding at 98%, reported Amara, a note of relief in her voice. Grant clenched his fist. "Mason, keep targeting their weapon systems. Disable, don't destroy. I want them to understand what they're dealing with." The Eclipse moved with startling agility for its size, darting between enemy ships. Its railguns roared to life, hurling high-velocity projectiles that ripped through the alien vessels like paper. Mason's precision disabled 3 more ships, leaving them adrift and vulnerable. On the bridge of one alien vessel, chaos erupted. The Zereth commanders, unaccustomed to resistance from primitive species, scrambled to regroup. Their communications were intercepted by the Eclipse's intelligence systems. "Captain, they're calling us demons," said Lieutenant Sarah Kane, the ship's communications officer, her voice tinged with amusement. They'd never seen technology like ours before. Grant allowed himself a grim smile. "Let's give them a reason to fear us. Amara, plot an intercept course for their flagship. Time to end this standoff." A new purpose. As the Eclipse closed in on the largest alien vessel, a sudden hail interrupted the battle. The Zereth commander, a tall, reptilian figure with dark scales and glowing yellow eyes, appeared on the holographic display. "Humans," the alien snarled. "You are not as weak as we believed. What is your purpose here?" Grant stepped forward. "Survival. Exploration. But we've seen enough to know what kind of empire you run." He glanced at Sarah, who had been monitoring the intercepted transmissions. She nodded. "Captain, they're slavers. They've captured thousands of sentient beings and are transporting them to processing facilities." The bridge went silent. Grant's eyes hardened. "Commander," he said, addressing the alien, "release your prisoners, or this ends badly for you." The Zereth commander sneered. "You overestimate your strength. We will crush you like all others." Grant turned to Mason. "Target their engines. Disable them completely." The Eclipse fired its railguns with pinpoint accuracy, rendering the Zereth flagship immobile. At the same time, the remaining Zereth ships began to retreat, unwilling to face the human ship's overwhelming firepower. "Captain," Amara said, her voice filled with urgency, "I'm detecting distress signals, thousands of them. There's a slave processing station nearby." Grant nodded, his decision made. Set course for the station. The Zereth Dominion just made a powerful enemy. As the Eclipse sped toward the heart of enemy territory, the crew understood they were no longer on a mission of exploration. They were humanity's first line of defense, and their fight was only beginning. The silent prison. The Eclipse emerged from hyperspace near a small, dark planet orbiting a dying star. The crew was greeted by an unsettling sight: a massive station, its jagged architecture suspended in orbit like a predatory beast waiting to strike. The station, bristling with defenses, radiated a menacing purple glow, the same energy signature they'd seen in the Zereth ships. This was the heart of the Zereth Dominion's slave processing operation, a grim machine designed to crush the hope of countless lives. "That's it," Lieutenant Amara Voss said, her voice heavy with disbelief as she analyzed the station's readings. Thousands of life signs aboard, spread across containment zones. Most are non-human. Captain Elias Grant stood at the center of the bridge, arms crossed, studying the holographic projection of the station. The structure was surrounded by a fleet of smaller Zereth vessels, patrolling like vultures. They seemed unaware of the Eclipse's presence, for now. "Tactical options?" Grant asked, his voice sharp. Mason Reed, the tactical officer, leaned forward at his console. "The station's shield matrix is formidable, but it's designed to repel direct assaults from conventional fleets. Our railguns could punch through, but not without drawing every ship in the sector." Grant nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What about their patrols?" "Lightly armed compared to what we faced," Mason replied. "They're more for show, meant to keep prisoners in line." The captain's eyes narrowed. "We'll keep the heavy guns quiet. Let's take the surgical approach. Covert infiltration." Grant turned to Chief Engineer Lucas Hart. "Can we mask our energy signature?" Lucas grinned. "Already working on it, Captain. The helix drive generates some weird quantum interference. They won't even know we're here if we stay out of their sensor range." "Good," Grant said, his tone decisive. "Amara, plot a stealth approach. Get us close enough to deploy a strike team." Within minutes, the Eclipse glided through the darkness, invisible to the Zereth patrols. The crew moved with hushed efficiency, their earlier victories replaced by grim determination. Down in the armory, Lieutenant Commander Zara Cole prepared the strike team. A former Special Forces operative, Zara had a reputation for getting results no matter the odds. She equipped her team with advanced pulse rifles and combat suits designed to resist Zereth energy weapons. As the eclipse neared the station, Zara addressed her team. "Our mission is simple. Locate the prisoners, disable the station's defenses, and get everyone out. The Zereth think we're demons. Let's give them a reason to believe it." A nightmare unveiled. Zara's team deployed via stealth pods, landing undetected in the station's lower maintenance bays. The air inside was thick and stale, the corridors dimly lit by pulsating purple lights. The oppressive silence was broken only by the distant hum of machinery. "Keep it tight," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible over the comms. The team moved like shadows, their suits blending seamlessly with the environment. As they advanced, the grim reality of the station became clear. Cells lined the walls, each one filled with beings of different shapes and sizes. Aliens of every imaginable species, their faces etched with despair. Some were too weak to move, their bodies scarred by years of mistreatment. Zara, one of her team members, Private Jules, whispered, his voice trembling. "This place, it's worse than we thought." "Stay focused," Zara replied, though her own heart ached at the sight. "We're here to change that." The team reached a control hub, a circular chamber filled with consoles manned by Zereth technicians. Zara signaled her team, and within seconds, the room was secured, the Zereth subdued without a sound. "Downloading the station schematics now," Zara said as she accessed the main console. Her eyes widened as the data appeared on her visor. "They're processing prisoners for transport to the Central Dominion worlds. If we don't act fast, these people are gone." Unleashing chaos, Zara's team split up. One group moved to disable the station's shield generator, while the other, led by Zara, headed for the containment zones. The plan was simple: shut down the shields and signal the eclipse to extract the prisoners. As Zara's group approached the containment area, the station's automated defenses activated. Turrets emerged from the walls, firing energy blasts that filled the air with crackling light. "Move," Zara shouted, her team diving for cover. The combat suits absorbed most of the blasts, but the intensity of the assault forced them to think quickly. "Jules, on me," Zara barked, motioning toward an exposed power conduit. "We take that out. The turrets go offline." Jules nodded, firing his pulse rifle in controlled bursts as Zara worked to disable the conduit. Sparks flew as the energy flow was disrupted, and the turrets fell silent. "Clear," Zara shouted, and the team pressed on. They reached the containment area, a sprawling labyrinth of cells stacked like a hive. Zara's voice softened as she addressed the prisoners. "We're here to help. Stay calm, and we'll get you out." The fight to escape. Meanwhile, the team at the shield generator completed their objective. Explosions rocked the station as the eclipse opened fire, targeting the Zereth patrol ships to create a path for evacuation. "Captain," Zara's voice crackled over the comms, "we've got the prisoners, but we're taking heavy fire near the extraction point." Grant's voice was steady. "Hold your position. Reinforcements are coming." The eclipse launched a squadron of drones, each one equipped with advanced weaponry and AI guidance. The drones swarmed the station, drawing fire away from Zara's team. Zara and her team fought their way to the landing bay, the prisoners close behind. The Zereth, though fierce, were unprepared for the humans' relentless assault. The extraction pods arrived just in time. Prisoners were loaded aboard as the eclipse continued to provide cover fire. Zara was the last aboard, her pulse rifle smoking from overuse. "All teams accounted for," she reported. "Good work," Grant replied. "Let's finish this. Retribution." As the eclipse pulled away from the station, Grant gave the order to fire a final volley. The station's core erupted in a blinding explosion, its oppressive glow snuffed out. The rescued prisoners, though battered, looked on with hope for the first time in years. "This is just the beginning," Grant said, his voice resolute. "The Zereth Dominion thinks they own the galaxy. They're about to learn otherwise." The spark of rebellion. The Eclipse emerged into open space with its precious cargo of rescued prisoners. The crew worked tirelessly to provide medical aid and comfort to the liberated captives. In the hangar bay, makeshift medical stations buzzed with activity as the ship's medics tended to beings of countless species, some unrecognizable, others startlingly humanoid. Captain Elias Grant stood near the hangar's observation deck, watching the scene below. His face was calm, but his clenched fists betrayed his inner turmoil. These were not just survivors. They were symbols of a galaxy living under the heel of the Zereth Dominion. Lieutenant Amara Voss approached him, her expression weary but determined. "Captain, the refugees are stabilizing. But their stories—" She paused, swallowing hard. "What the Dominion does to them, it's worse than we imagined. Forced labor, experiments, gladiatorial combat for their amusement." Grant nodded grimly. "And it's been happening for centuries, unchecked. That changes now." He turned to Amara. "Any signs of pursuit?" Amara checked her datapad. "No, sir. The station's destruction scattered their forces in this sector, but it won't last. The Zereth will regroup, and when they do, they'll come for us." Grant's jaw tightened. "Let them come, but we won't wait to be hunted. Prepare a briefing with the senior officers. It's time to plan our next move." The seeds of unity. In the briefing room, the senior crew of the Eclipse gathered around a holographic table. The room was thick with tension, but beneath it was a growing sense of purpose. Sarah Kane, the ship's communications officer, initiated the meeting by projecting intercepted Zereth transmissions. "The Dominion is calling us the Shadow Demons. They've put a bounty on our heads and labeled us a galactic threat. They're using this incident to tighten their grip on occupied systems, claiming they need more security." "Typical," muttered Zora Cole, leaning back in her chair. "Use fear to control the narrative. It's how empires like theirs stay in power." Grant leaned forward, his eyes scanning the map of the Zereth-controlled sectors. "They'd underestimated us once. We need to make sure they never get the chance again. If we're going to cripple the Dominion, we need allies. These prisoners, do we know where they came from?" Sarah nodded. "We've identified at least 6 species among the rescued. Most of them are from planets under Dominion control. If we can find their homeworlds, we might be able to rally their people." Amara spoke up, her voice cautious. "That's assuming they're willing to fight. The Dominion has kept these worlds isolated and terrified for generations. A spark of rebellion might ignite something, or it could snuff out any hope they have left." Grant's gaze swept the room. "Then we don't give them a choice. We show them what's possible. Humanity's strength isn't just in our weapons. It's in our defiance. We've faced annihilation before, and we've survived. It's time the galaxy learns what we're made of." The call to action. The Eclipse's first stop was a small system on the fringes of Dominion space, home to one of the liberated species, a race of insectoid beings called the Selfar. Their crystalline wings shimmered in the dim light of the ship's hangar as they stood before Captain Grant, their leader, a stoic figure named Servok, addressing him directly. "You freed us from the shadow of despair, Captain," Servok said in a voice that clicked and hummed. "But freedom is fleeting when the Zereth still hold our world in chains." Grant stepped forward, his tone firm. "We didn't come here to liberate a handful of people. Servok, we came to start a revolution. But we need your help. Your people know the Dominion's strengths and weaknesses better than we ever could." Servok tilted his head, his iridescent eyes narrowing. "My people have suffered for centuries. They fear the cost of rebellion." Grant's voice softened, but his resolve was clear. And what's the cost of doing nothing? Every system we leave under Zereth control is another life enslaved, another child who grows up believing they're powerless. We have the technology and the will to fight back, but we can't do it alone. After a long pause, Servok extended a spindly arm. Then we will stand with you. The Xelfar will join your fight, Captain. Let the galaxy know the Zereth are not invincible. A new alliance. With the Xelfar on board, the Eclipse set its sights on the next target, a Dominion outpost that served as a communications relay. Taking it out would cripple Zereth coordination in the sector, giving their growing rebellion a chance to spread. The mission was swift and brutal. The Eclipse's stealth capabilities allowed them to approach undetected. Zara Cole led a strike team to disable the outpost's defenses, while the ship's railguns took out any resistance. As the dust settled, the outpost became a beacon for the rebellion. The Xelfar, now emboldened, used the relay to broadcast a message across Dominion space. To all who suffer under the Zereth Dominion, know this: you are not alone. The shadow of oppression is lifting, and the light of freedom is rising. Stand with us, and together we will break the chains that bind us. The message spread like wildfire. On occupied worlds, whispers of resistance turned into open defiance. Small groups of rebels began to rise, inspired by the actions of the Eclipse. The Empire strikes back. But the Dominion was far from idle. The Zereth High Command, enraged by the growing insurrection, deployed one of their most feared warlords, Commander Jorvik. Known for his ruthless efficiency and unmatched tactical mind, Jorvik wasted no time in rallying the Dominion fleet to hunt the Eclipse. On board the Eclipse, the crew monitored the growing threat. Mason Reed updated the tactical map with new enemy movements. They're consolidating their forces. Jorvik is pulling ships from across the sector to create a blockade around key systems. Grant studied the map, his mind racing. He's trying to cut us off from our allies. If we can't move freely, the rebellion dies before it really begins. Zara smirked. So we break the blockade. Hit them where it hurts. Grant nodded, a plan forming. We'll need to outthink Jorvik. He's expecting us to fight like a conventional fleet. Let's show him how humans wage war. As the Eclipse prepared for its next mission, the crew felt the weight of what they were building. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about hope. Hope for a galaxy that had forgotten what freedom felt like. Breaking the chains. The Eclipse drifted through the void of deep space, cloaked in silence, its systems running on minimal power to avoid detection. In the war room, Captain Elias Grant and his senior officers studied a sprawling holographic map of Dominion space. At the center of the display was Jorvik's blockade, a ring of fortified starships choking the supply lines and cutting off communication with their fledgling allies. Jorvik's strategy is clear, Grant said, his voice steady but intense. He's not just hunting us. He's trying to isolate the rebellion before it spreads. Lieutenant Amara Voss leaned over the table, her expression grim. And he's good at it. Every time we make a move, he's there, forcing us to retreat or divert. If we don't act soon, the rebellion will collapse. Zara Cole, the Eclipse's lead strike commander, smirked from her seat. Then we stop running. We take the fight straight to him. Grant nodded. Exactly. But we won't win with brute force. Jorvik's fleet outnumbers and outguns us. We'll need to outthink him. He turned to Sarah Kane, the communications officer. Have you identified any weak points in their coordination? Sarah tapped a console, bringing up a detailed diagram of the blockade. The Dominion uses centralized command nodes to coordinate their fleets. One of these nodes is stationed on a heavily fortified platform near the Hikari Nebula. If we take it out, the entire blockade will lose cohesion. Chief Engineer Lucas Hart frowned. That platform's defenses will be brutal. They won't just let us stroll in and knock out their command systems. Grant's gaze hardened. We're not going to stroll in. We're going to make them think we're hitting somewhere else. If Jorvik thinks we're targeting a different sector, he'll reposition his forces. That's when we strike the platform. Setting the trap. The Eclipse initiated its plan with a series of calculated diversions. Small strike teams led by Zara infiltrated Dominion supply depots across nearby systems, planting false intel suggesting an imminent assault on the industrial heart of the Zereth Dominion. The bait worked. Jorvik's fleet began to shift, pulling resources away from the Hikari Nebula to reinforce the supposed target. As the Dominion forces moved, the Eclipse slipped past their outer defenses, heading straight for the command platform. The platform loomed ahead like a mechanical colossus, its spiked towers bristling with weaponry. Surrounding it were several capital ships, their engines glowing faintly in the nebula's swirling mist. "Mason," Grant said, addressing his tactical officer, "what are we looking at?" Mason Reed's voice was measured. 6 destroyers and 2 heavy cruisers guarding the platform, sir. Their shields are optimized for frontal assaults, but their rear sectors are vulnerable. Grant smiled faintly. Then that's where we'll hit them. The infiltration. Under the cover of the nebula's dense gases, Zara Cole led a small infiltration team toward the command platform aboard a stealth shuttle. Their mission was clear: disable the platform's main defenses from the inside, paving the way for the Eclipse to strike. Inside the shuttle, the team reviewed the platform's layout one last time. "Remember," Zara said, her voice low but firm, "we hit the control room, take out their shield generators, and get out. No heroics." The shuttle docked silently on the platform's underbelly, using a maintenance access point to avoid detection. The team moved with practiced precision, their pulse rifles at the ready. The platform's corridors were dimly lit and eerily quiet, but the tension was palpable. As they approached the control room, they encountered their first patrol, a trio of Zereth soldiers, their imposing forms illuminated by the faint purple glow of their armor. Zara signaled her team to hold position. With a quick gesture, she motioned for Private Jules to flank the patrol. In a swift, coordinated strike, the team neutralized the guards without raising an alarm. "Control room's just ahead," Jules whispered. Zara nodded, her eyes sharp. "Let's move." The platform assault. Back on the Eclipse, Grant watched as the holographic display updated in real time. "Zara's team is in position," Sarah reported. "We're ready to begin the assault." "Good," Grant replied. "Amara, bring us in close. Mason, prepare all weapons. Once Zara disables their shields, we hit them hard." The Eclipse powered up its systems, its sleek form cutting through the nebula like a predator stalking its prey. As the ship approached the platform, the Dominion vessels detected the intrusion. "Enemy ships are locking on," Mason called out. "Hold steady," Grant ordered. "We're not engaging until those shields go down." On the platform, Zara and her team breached the control room, their pulse rifles cutting down the guards in a flurry of precision fire. Zara rushed to the main console, connecting a data spike to override the shield systems. Come on," she muttered as the console's interface blinked under her commands. Outside, the Dominion ships began to close in on the Eclipse. Purple energy beams lanced toward the human ship, but the Helix shields absorbed the blasts with ease. "Shields holding at 80%, Mason reported. Grant's expression remained calm. "Zara, we could use that opening any time now." "Working on it." Zara shot back over the comms. Finally, the console beeped, and the platform's shields flickered before collapsing entirely. "Shields are down," Zara announced. "Fire at will," Grant commanded. The Eclipse unleashed its full arsenal. Railguns roared to life, their projectiles ripping through the unprotected hulls of the Dominion ships. Explosions lit up the nebula as one destroyer after another fell to the human vessel's relentless assault. A critical blow. With the Dominion ships in disarray, the Eclipse turned its focus to the command platform. A concentrated volley of railgun fire struck the platform's core, triggering a chain reaction that consumed the entire structure in a fiery explosion. As the dust settled, Grant's voice echoed across the bridge. "Status report. All enemy ships neutralize," Mason replied. "The platform is destroyed. No further hostiles on scanners." A cheer erupted from the crew, but Grant quickly raised his hand for silence. "This was just one battle," he said, his tone firm. "Jorvik will come for us with everything he has. But today, we've shown the galaxy that the Dominion can bleed." In the hangar, Zara's team returned to the ship, exhausted but triumphant. Zara approached Grant, a faint smile on her face. "Mission accomplished, Captain." Grant nodded. "You did good, Zara. But this is just the beginning." As the Eclipse prepared to move to its next target, the crew knew they were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to be free. Shadows of the Resistance. The Eclipse slipped into the darkness of deep space, its black hull blending seamlessly with the void. Though victorious in their assault on the Dominion command platform, the crew of the Eclipse knew their actions had sent ripples through the galaxy. Captain Elias Grant stood in the observation deck, staring out at the stars as the ship's helix drive hummed quietly. A soft chime announced the arrival of Lieutenant Amara Voss. "Captain," she said, her tone subdued but urgent, "we've intercepted new transmissions from the Dominion. Jorvik has mobilized their dreadnought, the Oblivion. It's heading straight for us." Grant turned slowly, his expression a mask of calm. "What's their ETA?" 2 days at best speed," Amara replied, glancing at her datavad. "And they're not alone. A fleet of support ships is rallying to their position. It's the largest force we've seen yet." Grant nodded. "They want to crush us in one decisive strike." "They might succeed if we stay in one place," Amara said hesitantly. Grant's lips curled into a faint smile. "Then we won't stay in one place." The hunt for allies. The bridge was alive with activity as the crew strategized their next move. With the Dominion bearing down on them, Grant knew their only chance lay in uniting the scattered resistance forces across the galaxy. Lieutenant Sarah Kane projected a map of nearby systems, highlighting potential allies. Several of the rescued prisoners mentioned resistance cells on occupied worlds, she said. "They're small, disorganized, but they're there. If we can rally them." "It won't be enough," interrupted Mason Reed, the tactical officer. "The Dominion's fleet isn't just big, it's coordinated. We need more than ragtag fighters. We need a proper military force." "What about the Derishi?" Zara Cole suggested, leaning back in her chair. The room fell silent. The Derishi were a powerful aquatic species, known for their advanced technology and fiercely independent nature. Though the Dominion had never conquered them outright, they had forced the Derishi into uneasy neutrality through decades of intimidation. "They won't join us," Mason said, shaking his head. "The Derishi only look out for themselves." Grant's voice cut through the debate like a blade. "They will if we give them a reason. Plot a course for Duresh Prime." A cold welcome. The Eclipse entered Duresh Prime's orbit, its sensors scanning the massive water world below. The planet's shimmering blue oceans covered its surface entirely, dotted with floating cities and underwater megastructures. The Derishi maintained their isolation with advanced orbital defenses, massive weapon platforms that tracked the Eclipse the moment it arrived. "Captain," Amara said, her voice tense, "we're being hailed." "On screen," Grant ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a Derishi representative. Her skin was smooth and reflective, like liquid silver, and her eyes glowed faintly with bioluminescence. "This is High Arbiter Lirath of Duresh Prime," she said, her tone icy. "State your purpose or leave our space immediately." Grant stepped forward. "High Arbiter, I'm Captain Elias Grant of the Earth Federation ship Eclipse. We seek an alliance against the Zereth Dominion." Lirath's expression didn't change. "The Dominion has never dared to attack Duresh Prime. Why should we involve ourselves in your war?" "Because their strength is growing," Grant replied. "They've enslaved countless worlds, and it's only a matter of time before they turn their attention to you. By then, it'll be too late." Lirith's bioluminescent eyes narrowed. You overestimate their interest in us, Captain. Darish Prime has no need for your rebellion. Grant took a deep breath, his voice hardening. The Dominion's dreadnought is already on its way to destroy us. If they succeed, they'll turn their fleet toward crushing every world that dares resist them. You may be safe now, but isolation won't save you forever. For a long moment, Lirath said nothing. Then she tilted her head slightly. Your argument is compelling, but words alone are not enough. Darish Prime will not risk its people on promises. What will convince you? Grant asked. Lirith's lips curled into a faint smile. Survive the dreadnought. Prove that your rebellion is more than a fleeting spark. Then we will consider your proposal. Preparing for the dreadnought. The Eclipse departed Darish Prime, its crew more determined than ever. Grant knew they had little time to prepare for the Oblivion's arrival, and he intended to make every second count. Options, he asked in the war room, addressing his senior staff. Lucas Hart, the chief engineer, tapped a console, bringing up schematics of the Oblivion. The dreadnought is a fortress. Its armor is impervious to most conventional weapons, and its firepower can vaporize entire fleets. But it's not invulnerable. The Helix drive gives us speed and maneuverability they can't match. Mason nodded. If we can outflank them and hit their command module, we might stand a chance, but getting close enough will be a nightmare. Zara grinned. That's where we come in. A strike team can slip aboard during the chaos and sabotage their systems from the inside. Grant's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. It's risky. Everything we've done has been risky, Zara replied. But it's the best shot we've got. The battle begins. 2 days later, the Eclipse detected the Oblivion entering the system. The dreadnought was an awe-inspiring sight, a leviathan of steel and fire, its jagged hull bristling with weaponry. Flanked by dozens of support ships, it moved with the slow inevitability of death itself. Enemy fleet on approach, Amara reported, her voice steady despite the tension. Battle stations, Grant ordered. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The Eclipse sprang into action, its railguns firing precise volleys at the approaching fleet. Dominion frigates exploded in bursts of flame and debris, but the Oblivion pressed forward, its shields absorbing every hit. As the Eclipse weaved through the enemy formation, Zora's strike team launched in stealth pods, slipping past the chaos to board the dreadnought. On board the Oblivion, the strike team encountered heavy resistance. Zerath soldiers flooded the corridors, their purple energy weapons lighting up the dark interior. But Zara and her team fought with unrelenting determination, pushing deeper into the ship's core. We're almost there, Zara shouted over the comms, ducking behind cover as energy bolts whizzed past. Make it quick, Grant replied from the bridge. We can't hold out much longer. Turning the tide. Zara's team reached the command module and planted explosive charges on the dreadnought's primary control systems. Charges are set, she announced. Get out of there, Grant ordered. As Zara's team evacuated, the charges detonated, sending shockwaves through the Oblivion. The dreadnought's weapons systems faltered, and its shields collapsed. Now's our chance, Mason called out. The Eclipse unleashed its full firepower, targeting the Oblivion's exposed reactor. The dreadnought erupted in a blinding explosion, its massive form breaking apart in the void. The remaining Dominion ships scattered, their morale shattered. A spark ignites. As the Eclipse regrouped, the crew let out a collective cheer. They had done the impossible, defeated the Dominion's most powerful weapon. Grant stood on the bridge, his voice calm but resolute. This victory isn't just ours. It's a message to every world under Dominion control. The Zerath can be beaten. The galaxy doesn't have to live in fear anymore. Back on Darish Prime, High Arbiter Lirath watched the footage of the battle with quiet admiration. Perhaps these humans are more than we gave them credit for, she murmured. The rebellion was no longer a faint hope. It was a roaring flame, and the Eclipse was its heart.